Professor R.S.N. Reddy, friends, let me start with conveying my greetings to all of you on the occasion of your National Day. I'm also very happy to meet the people from the happiest country in the world. See, the business world conducted some survey and finds that Bhutan is the happiest country in Asia and the 8th happiest country in the world. When I see all of you from Bhutan, happy to meet the happiest people. See, we are also looking for how you are maintaining your happiness is a challenging thing, and I am very happy to meet all of you. I propose to spend some time discussing with you on the topic of state and education. The subtitle of my presentation will be Education for Gender-Sensitive Society and Parliament. You are all parliamentarians and associated with the highest levels of decision making in the administration. You have a very important role in the field of education. My arguments are three. I have three arguments to make. The one is gender-sensitive society is essential and it is the foundation for gender-sensitive parliament. When we are looking for gender-sensitive parliament, gender-sensitive society is the foundation, and that only can sustain gender-sensitive parliament. This is one argument. My second argument is education is an important instrument for development of gender-sensitive society. This is my second argument. And my third argument is state has an important role in the promotion of education. These are the three arguments. I would like to elaborate these three arguments. First, if you take gender-sensitive society and gender-sensitive parliament, it is a training program for gender-sensitive parliament, but gender-sensitive society is the foundation. The relationship, if you see, between the gender-sensitive society and the gender-sensitive parliament, you can have gender-sensitive parliament only if you have gender-sensitive society. Or, if you are looking at from the top, gender-sensitive parliament may contribute for creating a gender-sensitive society. See, this is a relationship between the gender-sensitive society and gender-sensitive parliament. Which is the cause and which is the effect, is the question. To me, if we are looking for a sustainable system, it is only gender-sensitive society which can result in a gender-sensitive parliament, not the other way. Sometimes, as you know, we also look for introducing something from above also. We also have in India experience in India when we achieved our independence in 1947. We constituted a Constituent Assembly. That Constituent Assembly debated nearly for 3 years, adopted a democratic, secular, socialist republic and a constitution. In the year 1949, when the constitution was adopted, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, you might have heard his name, one of the great architects of Indian Constitution and Indian nation, the chairman of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution. In the Constituent Assembly, last day of the Constituent Assembly, November 26th, he made a final address to the Constituent Assembly. He made an observation that today we have adopted a democratic constitution. But we also must be aware that we are still living in a society which is not that democratic. Very inegalitarian socio-economic system we are living, but we have adopted a democratic constitution. We have adopted democratic constitution on the principle of one person, one value. This is the principle on which a democratic constitution was adopted. But the society is not based on the principle of one person, one value. He found that there is a contradiction between the society which is inegalitarian, a society which is based on hierarchical principles, a society where there is a lot of inequality. That society adopted a government, adopted a constitution, adopted a form of government which is based on the principles of equality, justice, liberty, fairness. All these are all the principles of constitution. So he found that there is a contradiction between these two things. Then he warned the country, unless you remove this contradiction, your democratic society cannot survive, or democratic society cannot serve the people. Democratic government cannot serve the people unless you have a democratic society. So the relationship between a democratic society and democratic governance, democratic constitution, is very critical, is very, very important. So when we are looking for gender sensitive parliament, that means parliament which is very sensitive, which is very responsive to the needs of the women, needs of the deprived people. We are looking for that type of a parliament which is very sensitive to their issues, their concerns and their problems. In the society also, if it is based on these principles of equality, gender equality, if it is not there, Parliament will find lot of difficulties in applying the principles of equality in operation. See, because there should not be any mismatch between the social systems and political systems. There will always be a conflict between these two systems if there is a mismatch between these two systems. That's why democratic governments can survive, can be effective only in democratic societies. So gender sensitive parliament can be effective, or parliament can play an effective role as a gender sensitive institution only if there is a gender sensitive society. This is the first argument, my first argument. My second argument is, when I say education is an important instrument for creating a gender sensitive society. Education is an important instrument for creating a gender sensitive society. As all of us know, if you see the roles of education, it has multiple roles. When we are looking at education, it has a multiple roles. Role of education at the individual level, if you see, it is to develop individual talent and sensibilities. At the individual level, education's role, if you see, individuals' talents, capabilities and sensibilities. And at a cultural level, education has a role of developing understanding of the culture, understanding of the society, understanding of the world in which we are living. Understanding of the nature, understanding of the society, understanding of our cultural practices. This is at the cultural level. At the economic level, education has an important role to develop necessary skills required to earn a living. To develop necessary skills required to earn a living and be economically productive. See, we are educated means we are developing the skills to make a living and to produce something which is necessary for the society, necessary for all of us to live. So this is an economic activity. Then it has also a political function. The political function is to impart citizenship education. Particularly when you are living in a democracy, education also has a role to impart citizenship education, because all of us are citizens. As citizens, we have some social responsibilities. As citizens, we have some rights. As citizens, we have some duties. Indian Constitution clearly says these are the fundamental rights every citizen is entitled. Also, Constitution also mentions these are the fundamental duties. So the education has a political role. So education has an individual function, cultural function, economic function, and political function. This is what we are looking at the education. So when I say that my second argument is education is an important instrument for gender sensitive society, create a gender sensitive society. I am very happy I was going through your net. You see the Royal University of Bhutan. The Royal University of Bhutan has identified the core values. The core values identified by this Royal University of Bhutan: compassion and fairness, creativity and innovation, community service, love for learning, accountability, responsibility, professionalism. These are the values. These are all the values. So the education must result in development of these values, which enable us to live in a society as a dignified individuals and contributing to the development of the society. So the dignity of the individual, when we are looking to the sensitive or what we call as a gender sensitive parliament, a parliament which honors the dignity of every citizen, a parliament which respects, or a parliament which enables the people to respect the dignity of every individual. So the core values of the University of Bhutan also talks about all those things. That means education has a role. When we are looking for a gender sensitive situation, society, education has this role. If you see the role of any university also, you see, we also in India, there is a problem with the scale also. You see, we have such a huge country. We have more than 650 university level institutions. We have one university level institution. It is the size of the country also. This is the problem of the size of the country also. If you see today's contest, the societies are called as the knowledge societies. Or you see, the knowledge is playing a very important role in the today's contest, whether it is in Bhutan or in India or in any other country also. When you look at the education, role of education in the knowledge society, particularly the universities, particularly the parliament must be aware of this broad vision of education. When we are looking at education, the parliament must be aware of how the education can play that important role in the knowledge society. We say the 5 important functions of knowledge-related functions of education. Knowledge-related functions of particularly tertiary level education or university level education. These knowledge-related functions, one we may say knowledge dissemination. This is what we mean by teaching and learning. Knowledge dissemination, teaching and learning. The second is knowledge creation. This is what we mean by doing research. We do research to create a new knowledge, because that new knowledge only helps the society to transform itself. New inventions, new ways of producing things, new ways of living, new knowledge. That is the research function, knowledge creation function. Third is knowledge application function. This knowledge application function is related to extension activities in the educational institutions. We apply our knowledge for development of the society. We apply our knowledge to develop the values. We apply our knowledge how we can create new structures and new institutions to establish our relationships. The social institutions we establish, understand critically the social institutions and try to establish the new institutions. So the application of knowledge is very important. Then the fourth function is knowledge preservation. Knowledge preservation is a knowledge resource center. The universities or educational institutions are the knowledge resource center to the future generations. To the future generation, the knowledge acquired, centuries of knowledge acquired, the universities or the educational institutions are the places where knowledge is preserved. Knowledge preservation is the fourth function. The fifth function is what we call knowledge accreditation. That means the certification of knowledge. Award of University of Bhutan. Royal University of Bhutan also awards degrees and this honors degrees and diplomas also it awards. The certification of the knowledge. That means you certify that you have acquired this much of knowledge or your knowledge is of this type. Maybe 3 years degree program or 4 years honors program like that, or the research programs you offer. So these are some of the functions of the education in a knowledge society, and these are all very critical for creating a society which is gender sensitive. I am coming back to your same theme because you are concerned with that theme of gender sensitive parliament. So this education will help us to create a new society. Education will help us to transform our society. As we feel that whatever is required for us, there is a change in the society. And that change in the society takes place through the education. Education is an important instrument. So my second argument is this: education an important instrument for gender sensitive society. Then from gender sensitive society, gender sensitive parliament will emerge. This is my point. The third point is, what is the role of a state in the whole thing? Because you are all associated, you are all parliamentarians and senior administrators, you are all in the important position of playing an important role in giving direction to the society. In giving direction to the society. When we are talking about the state, as you know, state is a collective instrument for realization of collective goals. The state is a collective instrument which has the power of enforcing its will. See, the difference from the state and other institutions is state has the power of enforcing its will. It has a monopoly over the physical force. That is the state. So the state has that power, and state's goal is work for the collective good, work for the common good. So what is the role of a state in the whole process of education? To me, 5 or 6 aspects I would like to bring to your attention. What role the state can play, because you are all in the critical position of playing that role as members of the parliament and as administrators. When you are entrusted with this responsibility, the first thing is, it is the parliament or it is the state which sets the vision of education. So the first thing is, what is your vision of education? When we say what is your vision of education, say for example, in India, I will give an example of India, you are the better people to judge what should be your vision of education. Suppose this in India, the vision of education, our constitution, Indian constitution also talks about our vision of education. See, Indian constitution talks about the fundamental rights of the citizens, Article 21 of the constitution, fundamental rights of citizen. It talks about the right to life. In the fundamental rights, right to life. And Indian constitution is interpreted by the Supreme Court, our court says that this right to life includes the right to education. So that means the vision of the education in India is, education is a fundamental right. Education is a fundamental right. Education is a fundamental right of every citizen. So every citizen has a fundamental right for education. That is the vision of education. So the Bhutan parliament also can set what is the vision of Bhutan. Do you think that education is a right of everyone? Or you think that education only should be restricted only to the privileged few? This is the question. So if you think that education is a right to everyone, then the government measures, the steps you are taking, the laws you are passing, the bills you are making, the regulations you are making, all those things must take into consideration. You believe in the philosophy that it is the right of every citizen to have education. This is the philosophy. If that is, you see, earlier it was not that philosophy even in India. At one time it was not that philosophy. Before independence, you see, when we were under the British rule, you were also under that British rule for some time. When we were under the British rule, education was limited to only few people. Only few people. Today, in the 2009, Indian Parliament passed a legislation which is called as a right to education legislation. That right to education legislation, what does it say? It says the primary education from 6 years to 14 years of age group, that primary education, it is a fundamental right of every citizen. That means if the state has a responsibility to provide primary education to every citizen, it is its responsibility. Primary education I am talking. Then there is also a demand in India, no, not 6 to 14, you make it 3 to 18. That means, you see, the preschool education also. You see, the education is from 6 years. That means after 5 plus, you go to the school. But there is a preschool education also. Make that also as a fundamental right. This is the demand in India. See, why I am saying is that I am bringing to your notice this type of a thinking you must also apply your mind, whether you can make it 3 years or 5 years or 6 years or up to 14 years or up to 18 years. It depends on. But the philosophy is education is a fundamental right. At least the primary education is considered as a fundamental right. Primary education. So the state has a responsibility to set the vision of education. When I am saying vision of education, do you consider it is a fundamental right? Do you consider that how they should have it? I understand that you have a free education at the school level. You have a free education at the school level. You are the better judges. But the point I am making is your philosophy. Then universality of the primary education, if you think as a philosophy, then the literacy. What is your philosophy? I think you have 60% literacy rate. I was going through your net. 60% literacy rate you have. Suppose this is if you want to make whole society literate, that means adult education programs. What is your philosophy of adult education programs also? It is possible. You may say that within coming 10 years, coming 5 years, coming 15 years, we would like to create a society which is a 100% literate society. if not an educated society, education is a higher level you are talking, at least literate society. Many developed countries, if you see that, the difference between a developed country and developing country, one of the areas of difference, one of the parameters of difference is all the developed countries, they have almost 100% literacy. You can't have any developed country. A country cannot be called a developed country if it is not having 100% literacy. If the Bhutan would like to become a developed country, a part of a developed country, developed countries, then you must achieve 100% literacy. Then how are you going to achieve this 100% literacy? If you have 60% now, 40% more, maybe adult education, maybe different forms of education. Maybe different forms of education. That's why here when we are looking at a mass education in Indian context also, we are looking not only the conventional mode of education, but also the distance mode of education. You also have that type of a part-time education also. The Royal University of Bhutan also has some part-time education also. Adult education, you can also think of having what we call the technology-based or distance education, particularly in a country of your geographical nature, terrain also, the hilly terrain, and the people living in different distant places also. You can think of that also. So that means here I am talking about if you have a vision of 100% literacy, then your policies, your programs. So that is the vision. So the parliament can set educational vision, educational policy. Parliament can formulate an educational policy. We also have educational policies. So this educational policy will have what are your goals. As I said, in Indian higher education, we have 3 goals. Indian higher education, our plans are talking about. One is the access. Access means opportunity for large numbers to have education. This is one question, large number. Even today we find in Indian context what we call as a gross enrollment ratio. In the age group of 17 to 23, this is only 17 or 18%. In the age group of 17 and 23 in India. The world average itself is 26 or 28, world average itself. Developed countries average is 55. And in some countries it is 80, 85. That means 17 to 23 age group people, if you take for example Canada or America or Britain, these countries, it is 80 plus. 80% of those people in the 17 to 23 age group are having higher education. But in India we have only 17%. I don't know what percentage you have in this Bhutan. You see this age group of 17-23. So as a parliament, you can think about it, and how do you increase that? Particularly Bhutan, fortunately, is also a very rich country. You see, your GDP is very high, and you see your good resources. It is good. But you have to use these resources for education purposes. That is very, very important. How are you going to use these resources for education purposes? How do you increase the gross enrollment ratio? Is a challenge. So first is the access question. Large number, more number. Primary education, universal primary education, higher education, more number. This is the goal. Adult education, everybody. So this type of a goals when you are setting. Then the another thing is in Indian context, we call it as a what? Equity question. Equity. Equity as we call it as an inclusive question. Inclusive question means we have, as I said, very hierarchical society, and with some sections of the society deprived of higher educational opportunities traditionally. Traditionally, some sections of the society are deprived of higher education opportunities. Only few sections of the society are having opportunities. So the principle is here is there should be equal opportunity to all categories of the people, irrespective of their financial position, resources, economic condition, economic resources. So they must be able to have opportunity. This is what is the principle of equity. Maybe in your society also, there may be, this is the multi-layer economic positions, economic status. In that economic status, the poor people are socially deprived. In India, we call them as the socially deprived, we call them as the scheduled castes or scheduled tribes or other backward classes, different categories. But in your situation also, maybe more pluralistic situation, in a pluralistic situation, how do you provide these opportunities to all sections of the society, all categories of the society, all linguistic groups, all social groups? This is the second question. The third question is equally important question is the what we call as the quality of education. The quality concerns. You see, today when we are looking at education, we are looking at a in a globalized context, that means more mobility is there. Globalized context is nothing but more mobility of the people. In a more mobility of the people, naturally people from Bhutan also may like to come to India, may like to come to other countries, go to other countries also, study there, and come back also. You see, this type of situation is there. So the quality of education from a school level to that of a university level, the quality of education is also equally important. So the parliament can think of what type of a quality measures should be taken. See, because you set the goals, you direct the system. So the quality is also equally important. Suppose Royal University of Bhutan, you want to make it a world-class university. This can be made as a world-class university. Royal University of Bhutan has all the potential. It has 11 constituent colleges and centers, 11 constituent colleges, and this is the programs in all sorts of programs also you are offering. You can make it a world-class university. World-class universities, generally, there are three characteristics of a world-class university. Generally, any world-class university, if you are looking, I think the University of Bhutan also has linkages with the Delhi University and other universities also. The three characteristics of any world-class university, this is what World Bank study has identified. One is concentration of merit among the staff and students. Concentration of merit among the staff and the students. That means the recruitment policies, you see, because it is the parliament, it is the administration which sets the recruitment policies. Maybe university is given the powers, but the recruitment policies, how do you recruit the people? How do you select the people? That recruitment policy must be based on the merit principle. Must be based on the merit principle. Then only you can have the talented people, and that merit is very important in the staff. Because that makes all the difference to the whole education system. The competence of a teachers at a school level and competence of teachers at a university level and the type of selection of teachers at school level and at university level, I think the parliament has a very important role to play in this. Administration, senior administration, officers, functionaries have a very important role to ensure that the merit is maintained or merit is observed, followed in the recruitment of teachers at all various levels. And even the students also should be based on recruitment based on the merit. This criteria, the merit-based system. So the whole education system must be a merit-based system. This merit-based system will result in more competencies. More competencies. And these competent people will be able to serve the society better. So this is one of the important features. The second important feature of any world-class university, I said three important features. One is the merit-based recruitment of student and staff, concentration of merit among the staff and the students. This is one. The second is, it also must have good infrastructure. When I say good infrastructure, physical infrastructure and educational infrastructure. Educational infrastructure, resources, the good library, good laboratories, and good physical infrastructure, good physical ambience. This is also very important for a university. Not only for a university, even for any educational institution, if you go there, this type of a requirement is there, infrastructure. The third requirement of any world-class university is what we call a very flexible governance systems. Flexible governance systems. The system of governance must be a very flexible governance systems. Then here I come to the third, that is aspect. Any educational institution must have, particularly higher educational institutions, must have that autonomy. Autonomy is very, very important to the educational institution, particularly to the universities and to the colleges. You have the 11 colleges which are constituent colleges, and you have the university, and they must have the autonomy. When we are looking at autonomy, as you know, education is an activity of finding the truth, telling the truth to the people in power. Suppose you see, as a parliament, you are looking to the education. What is that you are looking to the educationists? Educationists must help you to understand your own society. Their research must help you to understand your own society. As a parliamentarians, when you are making a decision, when you are taking decisions, when you are making policies, these policies must be based on the knowledge, must be based on the understanding of the reality, understanding the truth. And sometimes truth may not be that convenient to the people in power. People in power. But They must have the power to pursue the truth without any limitations. Then they will tell that this is the truth. How far you take it into consideration and what you will do with that truth, it is left to the parliamentarians and to the authorities. But as a teacher, my responsibility is to say that this is leading to these problems. This is the problem. In the society, if you have some problems because of these reasons, these policies are causing these problems. If you want economic development in a particular way, these are the methods which can give these results. Alternative ways. This is the alternative truth or alternative ways you must be able to find and then tell to the policymakers. So the parliament is looking to the educational institutions to have an idea about or to help you to have an idea about what are the implications of the particular public policies also. Many policies you are adapting, many schemes you are launching, developmental schemes you are launching, development of the economy, Parliament is interested, economic policy you are formulating. So the educational institution must be able to critically examine the implications of all these economic policies, your social policies, your public policies, your relations with other countries. In all these matters, the educational institutions must be a sort of a think tank to the Parliament. A think tank to the Parliament. You see, you must have somebody to examine on your behalf. You are very busy with so many other things, interacting with the people, making legislation. When you make a legislation, if that legislation is to be relevant to the people, the knowledge input must come from the universities and educational institutions. This is very important. And that is possible only when you give them some sort of autonomy. Autonomy is necessary, freedom and respect and the dignity to the educational institutions and the teachers. This is the responsibility of the Parliament. Then, I also was referring earlier, it is quite possible today to use extensively the technology in education. Here also the Parliament can play a very important role because the government can play a very important role in creating technology infrastructure in the country. You can create a technology infrastructure in the country. Maybe telephone infrastructure or television is the media or other technology media or computer is the internet connectivity media and all this technology media, and it can be used for education purposes. It can be used for education purposes, particularly when you are looking for educating the housewives, because the gender sensitivity you are concerned with. How do you empower the housewives? That means they are not able to leave their houses and they have responsibilities, the home management responsibilities they have. When they have those responsibilities, without disturbing their home life, how can they get themselves educated? This is a challenge. See, the Parliament is very much concerned, as a national body, you are concerned with how do you help the women to educate themselves without disturbing their normal family responsibilities also. See, because they have formal family responsibilities also. There, for the women, the distance education mode, what we call as the open learning or distance learning by different names, the technology-mediated form of learning, where the learning takes place from home. This is what is called as a direct-to-home. Education through direct-to-home. This direct-to-home, the television channels you might have heard, direct-to-home television channels. Direct-to-home education refers to education lessons and education programs. You prepare in the print media, you prepare by the technology media and send them to their home. And they read. And you provide some guidance also through technology. You provide some guidance through the interactive sessions, some interactive sessions. Thereby you can educate the women also. So this is a challenge. Then continuing education also is another important dimension which the Parliament must take into consideration, because learning is no more considered as a sort of a one-time activity. Traditional meaning is learning means particular age school education. That means 6 to 14 is a school education, or 6 to 18 is a school education. 18 to 23, 24 is a university education. 23, 24 afterwards, 24 to 50 or 60 is a employment. This is what the traditional division of our roles. But today it is accepted that learning is a lifelong activity, is not a one-time activity. Because the knowledge is also becoming, the fast speed is developing. Knowledge is developing at such a fast speed. Things are changing so fast. Obsolescence of knowledge, some people say that in 5 years, whatever knowledge you have is becoming obsolescent. So this is the type of a developments. So learning, continuous learning is very important, and technology will help you to learn continuously. Technology will help you to learn continuously. This is the one thing. Then the last two observations. One is education. When you are looking as a parliamentarians, I think when you give the vision, you have to look for education, learn from others, but try to relate to your context. Try to relate to your context. Because your context, suppose if you ask me to tell about the Indian context, I can go on giving lectures about Indian context. Sometimes it may or may not be immediately relevant to you. You are the better judges. But what you have to see is learn from others, but at the same time, try to apply to your context. Suppose your language problems, you have your language problem. We also have a language problems. We have 20 or 22 official languages, multi-language, multilingual society. Even in the Bhutan also is a multilingual society. You have different languages. You have English as a medium of instruction. You have Bhutanese as a second national language. Maybe other languages also, people with other languages also. Maybe you see some opportunities for them to learn their languages also. See, you have to give. So these are some of the language questions, or some of the questions of affordability questions, and some of the questions of accessibility questions. These are all the questions which we have to look into the national context, contextualize the experience of the world. Parliament has an important responsibility of contextualizing the experience of the world in the field of education also. In the field of gender-sensitive issues in education. We have in India also a lot of gender-sensitive issues in education. In India, even today, 40% of our learners are women. But we expect them to be 50%. 50% population is women. So the learners also, if you see that, it should be 50%. That is what our goal. But today is 40%. At the time of independence, it was only 20%, you know. Now you see, because it reached 40%. So we are aiming at making it 50%. So you also can think of it. What is your percentage and how do you increase their percentage, women's percentage? And in the employment also. Women in education sector. What percentage of women are there in the education sector? What percentage of women? And this is what are the type of the programs which sensitize the women, sensitize the people in general to the gender sensitive issues. How do you sensitize the content, curriculum development? These are all the issues related, but you are the better judges to look into those issues. My last observation is, I think, I'll take 2-3 minutes only. My last observation is, it is about the institutions. Education we look at as an institution, as a public institution. Suppose, okay, as a public institution. Traditionally, if you see the history of education, traditionally it used to be the family responsibility. Education was a family responsibility, individual or family, and the father or the mother transfer the knowledge to the children. That's how family tradition. Then the community started playing an important role in the education also. Maybe the religious groups or the community started playing an important role. Then now the state is supposed to play a very important role, because the state is an important instrument, is a collective instrument. The state is a very important collective instrument, and the parliament is the collective institution. So it plays a very important role. Then now, even the private sector, we call it as a private sector, or the industry or the market also is playing a very important role in the education. These are all the different changes are taking place in the role of these institutions. So the parliament has a responsibility of bringing all of them together, integrating the role of all these people, integrating the role of the market, integrating the role of the public institutions, integrating the role of the community. So the parliament has that responsibility. The state has that responsibility when I am talking about the state. And here, the state institutions to facilitate and state institutions to regulate. The dual role of the state institutions to facilitate education, and the state institutions to control the educational processes. When I am saying controlling educational processes, broad vision of the society, vision of the education is set by the parliament. So you have to see that all these educational institutions are following that vision. Within that broad vision, some autonomy is given. So the regulation and facilitating role, facilitating necessary resources, necessary financial support, necessary political support, necessary social support. You have to see that also. In these institutions also, we have different models. You see how the institutions are operating. I was only wondering, somebody was making a comparison of how the institutions in the developed countries like America, we say that model, are operating, and how the institutions in the developing countries are operating. it applies to the educational institutions also. In the developed countries, in America, in those countries, the scope of the state institutions is limited. The scope of the operations is limited. The scope is limited, but with a very strong institutional effectiveness. The limited role they are playing effectively. It was a limited role to the state, but effective role. Whereas in some of the developing countries, the scope of the state role is very wide. We expect the state to do everything. But the institutions are very ineffective. Larger role to the state, ineffective institutions, very great challenging task. Limited role to the state, effective institutions, you will have the results. So the parliament has an important responsibility of designing the type of the institutions. You are designing, you are responsible, you are making an institutional design. So the parliament has the power of making, designing the institutions which are very effective. This is very challenging task. That's why the goals of the education which are very wide, and that creates a new society, that creates a new values. You are looking for creating these new values. I am sure that if the society is built on based on these new values, and if education can result in building the society based on these new values, Parliament's role becomes very easy or more effective also. It is true that not only in India, in your country also, I know that is the vision or visionary leadership of your king, your monarch, resulted in a constitutional monarchy, and many democratic processes are a result of the vision of your king. Is result of vision of your king. But if you also create a society which is matching that vision of the king, and that education can help create that society which matches the vision of the king, Parliament can sustain this system. Parliament has important role of sustaining it. Otherwise, what will happen? King has a vision and he entrusted the Parliament with this responsibility. If the Parliament failed to do that responsibility, society will suffer. But the society is what you call as the support. The society support. Society will be able to support only. Society also is built or is structured or restructured or transformed based on the values, and in that, education is the only way of inculcating new values. There is no other way. You see, new values cannot be inculcated by orders. You can't issue an order. Parliament cannot issue tomorrow an order saying that is from day after tomorrow, everybody will value this, everybody will respect. This is some orders has to be implemented. How do you implement it? Only the people accept that this is a genuine order, the legitimacy. The legitimacy of a new system, the education has an important role to provide that legitimacy to the new system. That's why the Parliament has this important role. I am very happy to share with you the importance of the education and the Parliament's role in creating a new type of an education to create a new society where you are looking for a constitutional monarchy is a new society from an absolute monarchy. And that constitutional monarchy, you require an educational system to sustain that constitutional monarchy and new democratic system. I think these are some of the arguments, some of the observations I thought that I can share with you. Thank you very much for